Good evening and thank you for joining us. A very familiar face in Thunder Bay's public school system has announced that he plans to retire later this year.
Ian MacRae will retire this summer after more than 4 decades of service with the Lakehead Public School Board. Kurt Black has the details.
Since beginning his career with the Lakehead Board as a high school teacher back in 1975, Ian MacRae has become a well-known leader in Thunder Bay's public school system. But after 47 years and numerous roles with the board, MacRae has decided the time is right to retire.
Well, I think it's everyone has their time, and certainly I felt that this was a good time to leave in terms of the board being in an excellent position to move forward with our new strategic plan in particular. I'm excited about that, and I'm very much looking forward to see it coming to fruition.
Before taking over as Director of Education in 2014, MacRae was a vice principal and principal at Westgate High School, and then a superintendent with the board. But in his eyes, it was the 15 years he spent teaching that was the most memorable time of his career.
I still look very fondly back on my days as a teacher-coach at Fort William Collegiate. That was the most memorable time in my career, and the opportunity to work with students and school communities, wonderful staff, has just been a blessing.
MacRae's tenure has also seen its fair share of difficult times, such as the decision to close Churchill High School in 2016 and then navigating the past 2 years of the pandemic. As for what is next in his future, MacRae admits it'll definitely be a change of pace once his retirement becomes official in August.
Well, I'm not very good at taking holidays. I don't think I've ever taken one, but I'm looking forward to just a little bit of downtime and, quite frankly, following the fortunes of Lakehead Public Schools as they move forward.
Kurt Black, TBT News.
The first-degree murder trial for 2 men accused of killing Lee Kyoto 3 years ago continued today at the Thunder Bay Courthouse. 50-year-old David Huey and 30-year-old Musab Saboon both insist they aren't guilty of murder or kidnapping. This was the third day of trial, which is being held in front of a judge only, rather than a jury. Kyoto was found dead on Mission Island on February 24, 2019, with a gunshot wound to the head. Today, the court watched a video of the police officer questioning Huey, who admitted he was with the 2 other suspects and the victim the night before. That contrasts the answer given by Saboon to the city police, who claimed that he and Huey were actually in Kitchener when the murder occurred. Huey confirmed he was at the local bowling alley where Kyoto and Saboon are seen on surveillance video having a dispute and then walking out the front doors. Huey admitted he was also in the car with them, but insists he was dropped off before anything happened to Kyoto. The trial continues tomorrow.
3 men from the GTA have been arrested after Thunder Bay police seized $50,000 in drugs and $5,000 in cash from a hotel room on Memorial Avenue yesterday evening. Officers found fentanyl, cocaine, and crystal meth when they searched the room and a vehicle on the property. 2 of the accused were arrested after brief struggles with police, while the other was taken into custody without incident.
A 33-year-old local man faces child pornography charges. Mitchell John Sameluck was arrested yesterday as part of the Thunder Bay Police cybercrime investigation that began back in January of last year. He's accused of accessing and distributing child pornography. He appeared in court today and has been remanded into custody.
The Northwestern Health Unit is reporting another COVID-19 related death. 21 people have now died in that part of northwestern Ontario throughout the pandemic. Here in the Thunder Bay area, a new COVID outbreak has been declared on the male side of the Thunder Bay Correctional Centre. Meanwhile, COVID numbers at the Regional Health Sciences Centre are down slightly today.
There are 33 COVID-19 patients at the regional hospital, down from 34 on Tuesday. 6 of those patients are in intensive care. The overall hospital occupancy rate has dipped below 103%, and ICU occupancy has fallen below 82%. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting 141 new cases. There are now 226 active infections. That's down from 242 on Monday and more than 300 late last week. The latest weekly incidence rate has fallen to about 255 cases per 100,000 people, down from 355 cases a week earlier. And the test positivity rate was also lower, dropping from 25% to 21.5%. The Northwestern Health Unit is reporting 265 active COVID-19 cases, up from 233. The test positivity rate, though, continues to fall. It's now at 24.2%. That's down from 26% on Monday and 32% last week. The new death is the fourth that's been reported over the last 8 days. And given the stubbornly high numbers in the NWHU, Medical Officer of Health Dr. Kit Young-hoon continues to strongly recommend a cap on gathering limits, despite the province lifting all capacity restrictions. Young-hoon is urging a maximum of 10 people indoors and 25 outdoors, and a maximum of 50% occupancy in indoor public settings.
At Queen's Park today, there was a checkup on Ontario's financial health as the province continues to recover from the pandemic. A new report on government spending has been released, and it comes with just the election a few months away. Colin DeMello reports.
The cost of the Omicron variant is becoming clear. As the COVID-19 strain overwhelmed hospitals, the province was forced to spend $1.5 billion to deal with the effects. But before Omicron, the Ford government was in a spending lull. According to the province's financial accountability officer, the government underspent by $5.5 billion in the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year.
These are terrific questions for folks to be asking of the government and the minister responsible for those portfolios. Why is the money not getting out?
The government's political opponents believe it's deliberate, as the Progressive Conservatives prepare for an election.
Over the next number of weeks, I have no doubt there's going to be a flurry of so-called feel-good announcements that Doug Ford is going to make. That's why. That's the only thing I can think of when a premier in this province, a Conservative premier, is prepared to underspend and shortchange to the tune of billions of dollars.
The government continues to make those promises and promotes them in the Ontario legislature.
Mr. Speaker, we're putting money back into people's pockets. We're putting $120 of the license sticker fee that they aren't in favor of. They would never give back to the people of Ontario. We're making sure that we're cutting tolls on the 412 and 418.
But when will Ontarians see the true cost of those promises? That will only come in late April, when the government tables its budget just days before the provincial election campaign is set to begin. And that means Ontario's financial watchdog won't be able to review it.
So we will not be able to provide our assessment of the government's budget or its spending plan after the budget is released until following the election.
At Queen's Park, Colin DeMello, CTV News.
And the province has introduced new legislation aimed at tackling the opioid crisis. Beth McDonnell details the plan to bring naloxone kits to more workplaces.
This is a naloxone kit.
Naloxone is a medication that can save a life, temporarily reversing the effects of an opioid overdose, giving time for medical help to arrive. Now, the Ontario government has introduced legislation to require the kits at high-risk workplaces like construction sites, nightclubs, and bars.
This will mean thousands of employers in all industries will have naloxone kits on site. This is about saving lives. We have to be ambitious in fighting this epidemic.
The government says in under a year, between March 2020 and January 2021, 2,500 people died from opioid-related causes. Of those employed, 30% were construction workers. In Toronto, suspected deaths are on the rise. The red line for 2019, blue 2020, and at the top green for 2021. The highest points, near 40 deaths a month.
I carry my kit with me. As a recovering addict.
Paul Rosen is a gold medal Paralympian. His addiction first started many years ago with a hockey injury and painkillers.
And it's not the stereotypical addict that we think of. This is killing so many young men, young women.
The Ontario Harm Reduction Network says a focus on the construction industry and destigmatizing drug use is a good thing. But most of the deaths happen in homes, shelters, and on the street.
I don't think that this initiative is actually going to save too many lives. People are not dying on construction sites, they're dying at home alone from a toxic drug supply.
It says naloxone has been widely available at Ontario pharmacies since 2017, and with an average of 230 people dying in the province a month, other steps could save more lives.
It would be nice to see municipalities and provinces advocating to the federal government to change our federal drug laws. In the meantime, we can initiate safer supply programs where we're giving people prescription opioids instead of relying on a toxic illegal supply.
If the legislation passes, naloxone kits could be on work sites later this year. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
Last month, the WSIB announced a long-awaited policy change for mine workers who were exposed to McIntyre powder many decades ago. They'll now automatically be approved for claims relating to Parkinson's disease. But the activists and retired miners here in the Northwest who had been fighting for the change say they aren't done yet. TBT's Lee Noonans reports.
The use of aluminum powder, called McIntyre powder, was declared dangerous in 1979, but the first clues that the product might be harming miners came much earlier, only a few years after it was first introduced in the early 1940s as a treatment to protect against silicosis. The activists behind the McIntyre powder project are now calling on the Government of Ontario to formally apologize. Paul Filto has been a lifelong advocate for miners' rights. His father was exposed to McIntyre powder when he returned to the mines after serving in World War II. His father was denied workman's compensation even though his health had started to decline when he was still in his 40s.
I started noticing the shaking going on and started getting forgetful. Things like he liked to photograph things and he had difficulty holding the camera. And coordination, we got our first car in 1954. It wasn't too long after I began to notice, like I was, I'm a little kid at this time, but I see that he's having difficulty braking, coordinating the driving with the braking, which is kind of scary,
Hugh Carlson's WSIB claim was also denied. Despite the opinions of his doctors, his sarcoidosis isn't recognized as related to the McIntyre powder he was exposed to working in Red Lake area gold mines as a young man.
And they were well-meaning when they thought, well, we'll coat their lungs with aluminum and it'll protect them from the silica dust and hence protect them from silicosis. And so everybody sat in there and they sprayed aluminum dust in the air. You can smell the something foul in the air. Like it was just sort of something that everybody accepted.
Finn Anderson retired as a driller many years ago, but he learned only last week that his Parkinson's may have been caused by his career in the mines.
There was a little story in the paper on the front page, and I just happened to read it. I knew about it when they were doing it, but everybody thought that was the thing to do. Well, when I found out that it had caused Parkinson's, that's got me concerned because I've had that for 22 years now.
And there's been a lot of miners now for the last 20 or 30 years been working out of Thunder Bay. And there's a real expansion of mining going on, especially with this ring of fire coming. And they'll all end up with some kind of ailments, and they'll end up with them, unfortunately, I think fairly early. So it's to be, I guess, the environmental and health effects of working underground. What are they? And does the Workmen's Compensation Board recognize them?
Ultimately, everyone we spoke to for this story was more concerned for future miners than for themselves. They hope to see changes to the WSIB that will put the well-being of miners before the agency's bottom line. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The legacy of Indian residential school systems was discussed today at an online event hosted by Diversity Thunder Bay. Archaeologist and LU anthropology professor Scott Hamilton also spoke about the different tools being used to help discover unmarked grave sites across the country.
These instruments are seen as the silver bullet that will solve all of our problems. No, it's a technique that has enormous potential, but there are things it cannot see. There are things it cannot detect.
In 2013, Hamilton began research on behalf of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to help identify possible unmarked residential school burial sites. He outlined that process today and showed some of the tools that can be used to uncover the sites. They range from satellite imaging and drones to ground-penetrating radar. He says it takes multiple tools to see the whole picture. Here in the Thunder Bay area, Hamilton says the community needs to reach a consensus on an appropriate way forward.
And after they have had the time to develop their position and their stance, then we will perhaps be invited to participate in the process, participate in the debate. It's not something that people who are not part of those communities can really slam dance all over this issue. We have to wait until it's appropriate.
The annual snow sculpture competition at Marina Park has wrapped up for another year, and the city has now announced its winners. A half dozen impressive creations were made by local teams of artists during the Family Day weekend. The annual competition has drawn big crowds to Thunder Bay's waterfront since, looking to check out the intricate artwork. Public voting closed this past Sunday. Harriet the Hermit Crab, created by local couple Mary Jane McDonald and Chad Curvin, took home the $1,000 top prize. They also won the People's Choice Award, netting them another $250.
It's a lot of work, so it's nice when your work is appreciated. I feel like all of the teams that did this year did such a fabulous job that makes it even more exciting to have yours chosen because they were all so great.
I mean, winning is nice, but we go on like little dates throughout the carving process, and we get to hang out with each other more than we hang out a lot, but now we're like, oh, we're in sculpture mode. We're not hanging out with anyone else. We're working on our thing.
The recent warmer weather has taken a toll on the sculptures this week, but Marina Park visitors can still check them out. McDonald and Curvin hope the next generation of snow sculptors will be inspired by the waterfront displays.